Welcome in to May 4th. May the force be with you. I'm Chris Manning. That is Brendon Kleen. This is the Just Basketball Show, Revenge of the Hooper. Okay, I got you the second Star Wars joke. There we go.
That's all good. Finished The Mandalorian last night. I'm ready to talk basketball.
All right, well, we'll talk about Mando after I've watched the 7 episodes I missed. As always, we have Jake Stevens and Dillon Heiser doing wonderful production behind the scenes. Please subscribe or interview in your podcast platform of choice if you have not already, and hit subscribe on YouTube and that notification bell if you haven't yet, either on TikTok, Instagram, all your social media platforms of choice. Jam-packed show today, as always. We're deep into the playoffs, so we're going to talk about 76ers Celtics Game 2, the return of Joel Embiid after he won the MVP, Lakers-Warriors Game 1, and we're going to talk about the Suns, who were down 2-0 against the Denver Nuggets, and we'll see if they can get out of it. And we have an interview at the back end of the show. Brendon talked to all-defensive guard candidate, Chicago Bulls guard, former Laker, Alex Caruso. Brendon, what do you tease people about the interview?
All defense lock. I mean, come on,
lock.
He's in there.
Yeah.
I didn't have a vote, but I'm willing it into existence. Yeah, we have Alex Caruso. He's going to talk about Jimmy Butler. He's going to talk about the Bulls being actually a good defensive team, despite how they get talked about, how he's grown as a player, and what he thinks of the fact that people just score 40 every night in the NBA these days.
Yeah, check out that interview. It's great. Shout out to Brendon and shout outs to Alex Caruso, who, the first ever guest on the Just Basketball pod as far as NBA players goes. More to come is
what an honor.
The plan here. What an honor. I mean, on his Hall of Fame plaque one day, if he gets there, it's all defensive team, maybe won a championship with the Lakers.
And then this.
Just basketball.
Yeah.
And this.
You
all
got
right.
it.
We're going to start, Brendon. We're going to start with something that I just find funny that I think should make an HBO show just as a spoof of it, and that's owner beef. So Dave Gilbert, the owner of the Cavs, and Matt Ishbia, the new owner of the Suns, have a long-standing business rivalry. Ishbia goes on Bill Simmons' pod and says this. So, quote, "So listen, I can talk for hours on it, and I can talk for a minute. The minute's probably easier. He doesn't like me, and I don't like him. That's how it is." Basically then proceeds to say he doesn't like how Dan does business and all these other things. This was after Simmons asked him about how Dan Gilbert did not basically just opted out of voting for Ishbia. It was 29-0 with Gilbert abstaining. He said he knew that's how it was going to go down. Brendon, I love that. This doesn't matter that much, in the grand scheme of how this league works. I just love that we got a little owner rivalry. This is fun. I hope Dan Gilbert's health kind of prevents him from being a public figure now in the way Ishbia is. So we're not going to get Dan Gilbert popping in on the Hoop Collective or anything like that in the near future. But I like that we got a little bit of owner rivalry. It adds a little bit of fun to me. I like this.
It was a wonderful distraction from the Suns being down 2-0. And look, it is awkward because one of the people involved in this is in poor health, and it's not always nice to do that. Matt Ishbia did remember 30-40 seconds into this whole monologue, he was like, "I wish him the best," all that stuff. I hope he's doing all right physically, but hate him.
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah, still sucks. Yeah.
Hope he recovers and is doing all right, but also F him. But no, I think
he rocks it. Yeah,
I think that I was saying this before we hit record. This is the closest to real beef in public that anyone in the NBA actually has. Outside of, I guess, Kyle Kuzma and Spencer Dinwiddie, this is number 2 in that list because they actually are putting, or Matt Ishbia at least, is putting words behind it. Most of these NBA guys just like to push each other around and get called for a flagrant one and then never bring it up again. This is real.
Yeah. The other thing in the Suns world that I want to hit on aside from the games is that the Suns are going ahead with this plan to take their games off of Bally. That contract was up, and they're going to put them and free for people to watch with a to-be-announced platform, correct? And now there's a suit where Diamond Sports is suing the Suns and the Mercury to block efforts to form this new media outlet. Look, this whole regional sports network stuff is very broken. I think there's very extreme examples of this all across the country. It's not really optimal for the consumer to watch games and have the most amount of people watch these games at this point. I loved the idea of what the Suns were going to do, and like how Ishbia talked about it with Simmons, to me made like really resonated as like something that like should and maybe could be adopted by other teams.
Yeah.
But how is this played locally? How is this kind of played in the Phoenix area?
I mean, great. And I think that the lawsuit part of it and like the business side, neither you or I are experts on, but I'll just say I feel like if they really thought that they would be countersued to a point where they would not be able to go forth with this plan, they probably would never have gone forth with this plan, right? So I think it'll happen. Maybe they just have to pay because it's really like a breach of contract situation is what's going on here. They're jumping off early, knowing that their contract is about to be over and there might be, some breaches of payment from Diamond because they're bankrupt and all that stuff. So I think the Suns were like, we'll eat whatever we have to eat. We just want to get out ahead of this. They also have the Mercury season to worry about, and the Mercury were part of this agreement to broadcast these games. So that is coming up here in like 2 weeks. So I don't know if they had the luxury of waiting. I think in the spirit of this show, the spirit of the things we care about, the number one important part here is it's going to grow the game. This is going to get TV up from less than 1 million potential viewers in the Phoenix market to almost 3. And that's huge. That's putting the sport in front of people in a way that it can grow and find new audiences, find people who don't happen to just live right around the city or able to afford cable, but everybody who basically has a TV and a satellite can watch these games now. And that's kind of the way it should be, in my opinion. I mean, I know we're not naive to capitalism and all the stuff about making money as a sports team, but if you can find a way to make money and show all your games to as many people as you want, then win-win-win. And that seems like what's about to happen here in Phoenix, and I hope people do kind of follow suit. It feels like, honestly, the other part of this, Chris, is the NBA. If you read some of the reports at the league level and the broadcast deal that they're going to negotiate, I think a lot of media insiders tend to feel like the league is going to be going back toward broadcast in a bigger way and away from cable. And that's awesome, too. Again, more people watching the sport that you and I care about. So great. More people to watch Alex Caruso's interview next time he's on going to the Hall of Fame.
That's right. I do hope this is like honestly like a sign of things to come for accessibility of sports. I hope this is the case for like every sport possible, and I hope the costs are. I think what I love about this more than anything else is that this isn't asking people to like absorb a bunch of extra cost. This isn't charging yes, there's going to be some money lost in that end, and I think that's notable. But I think the fact that they are not going to make this something with a really high price point, I think is the biggest one of it. You are not making this an upper middle class kind of thing. Like
you're not just telling people to like, hey, just buy League Pass, whatever, $150 a year, no problem. It'll all just be there now. It's like, well, $150 a year is like the same as some cable packet. You know what I mean? Like you're not exactly saving money there. So this is genuinely cost cutting, and that's really cool. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, love that as a model, and I hope other owners, this sets like a standard going forward. And if not, we can do what Tottenham fans have done, which is yell and say, I want a refund for this crap thing I'm watching. And you know what? If your team's bad and you want to try to yell at them to get your money back for a overpriced like Bally thing, then you should do it. Brendon, let's go to the 76ers and the Celtics. Game 2 was not particularly competitive. Embiid is back. The series is now 1-1. Embiid wins the MVP, comes back, doesn't play game 1 due to that injury. I think let's start there. How do you feel like Embiid looked in his return?
It felt like he had a plan to primarily impact the game as a passer and a defensive like rim protector, and I just don't think that was enough. We know Joel Embiid and Jimmy Butler are close. I feel like Embiid should have done like Jimmy and just sat game 2, because it's already a road game. They already had one in hand. There's no need to rush it. And it honestly, all things considered, kind of felt like he hurt the team more than he helped them, especially when you realize how great Harden was. And I think there is a certain aspect of when Harden is at his best, sometimes he doesn't really need a screen. He doesn't really need to get other guys involved. That's how he was cooking in game 1. And part of me wonders, well, what if Embiid wasn't there to even stand, near him and allow more help to come? And Harden could have just kept doing what he did in game 1. I don't know if he could have, because that was an all-time performance, but this didn't feel like it really helped them in any way, and it might have hurt him.
Yeah, I don't know why Embiid played, to be honest with you. I I don't totally understand like what the thought process was. I understand you say, okay, we can get game 2. We go up 2-0. We've won both games in Boston. We've played them much better at home this year. Embiid's splits home to road have been crazy, right? Let's just try to put our foot down. I get that impulse. And maybe Embiid was like, I'm playing, can't stop me. He just didn't look right. Yes, he had 5 blocks. He altered some shots. Like his presence alone gives that, but he was not looking to take layups at times in this game. He missed like a bunny at this game. Like the energy level from Embiid was not really as the assertive, aggressive Embiid we've seen. He finishes just having kind of an egg game and took under 10 shots. And like I don't think the juice was worth the squeeze here.
No, I don't think so. And I guess, same reason as we're saying he could have just sat and it wouldn't have mattered, then I guess the loss doesn't really hurt them too badly either. But again, part of me just wonders how and if Harden could have kept the magic going if he wasn't worried about, all right, I'm trying to run the 2-man game and got to feed the post and all that stuff. Obviously, to win a championship, which is their goal, they're going to have to play together. But considering the injury, considering the way that Harden played, just pull up threes, drive into the basket, get into the free throw line in game 1, why not just let that continue to roll? I think they would have had a better chance winning if they did that than what they did tonight. Can we talk about that Harden game?
Yeah, well, I just want to say game 2 for him was like the opposite of game 1. Game 1 was the singular best James Harden playoff performance I think I've seen. I mean, He looked like Houston James Harden in terms of how he got into the paint, how he was beating his man without screens. Like Brendon, I felt like his burst, I felt like his ability to get into the paint was as good as we've seen it since he hurt his hamstring in Brooklyn. That to me was as good as we've seen Harden look since that injury. He was assertive. He got to the free throw line. He was playing really physical. He was like there's sometimes in those late game situations, I don't always know. Like you can kind of tell, okay, I don't know if this guy's going to make the shot. I don't like its chances of going in. I was just like, I think he's going to drill this 3 over Horford. I was just like, I understand exactly what he's doing. He was so dialed in that it just felt like that was going to be a big Harden moment. And for him to step up like that, it doesn't like wash away like every stinker he's had in the playoffs. It doesn't change like how we think about Harden as a playoff guy, I think, fully. I think really only a title can maybe kind of shape away some of those broad assumptions and thoughts about him. But this was like, okay, Embiid's out. You need me to step up. You need me to be the man. Bet I'm going to do it. And he absolutely delivered for Philly when they needed him.
Are you a James Harden guy? Do you like him? Do you like watching him?
No, I do not.
Okay.
Harden's style of basketball is not like my taste. My taste is I like a little more kinetic. I like a little more movement. I also don't love heliocentric stuff. Mm-hmm. I don't love this is my issue with Luka in the same way. Like I understand how singularly great they are. I understand like the logic of the way these teams are playing. What I don't particularly enjoy, I don't think it's like fun to watch basketball when one guy dribbles a bunch and everyone else is standing there and like looking to like maybe get a catch and shoot 3. Like I don't think that is interesting to watch. It's not what attracts me to basketball, even if I understand why Harden plays it. The funny thing is, it's like I loved Harden. I thought I really liked Harden in Oklahoma City. Houston Harden is where like I kind of lost me.
So it's not really my type of basketball either. I mean, we've had Luka conversations on the podcast a few times now, and I think we both are pretty worn out by his act. But for some reason, I loved James Harden. The Houston Rockets Harden years, I just loved watching those teams. I know that sounds insane. That's like I'm in the very small minority, but I just feel like I was so in awe of what he was able to do, just doing the same thing over and over and the defense not being able to stop it. There's something pretty awesome about that. And I know in the postseason, the defense was able to stop it fairly consistently. I think he has had plenty of great playoff games. I think that kind of gets lost. It's just toward the end of playoff series, especially as the rounds get later, is where he's fallen off. And that's obviously a dent in a legacy of a player who was an MVP candidate. There's only so high you're going to be rewarded. But I think the way he was able to completely kill a defense and make the game be played on his own terms. Mm-hmm. There's something really to be said for, You're in the middle of a playoff series against a dynasty, and the game is happening on your terms, even against Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, whoever it was. So anyway, I think he's a really special player, but I think you're right that I didn't think we would ever see this again. He blew past Jaylen Brown at least once in this game. He scored on a post-up against Marcus Smart in game 1. Crazy. But I guess my question is, so he was 16 of 38 on pull-up threes in the playoffs so far heading into tonight. That's really, really good. It's something he's had to rely on because, again, even in the Nets series last round, we thought he was going to be really hampered by the leg. Do you think he can do that again? Is where I go. Can he pull something like that off? It won't be 40-plus points because Embiid's probably going to play the rest of this series, but can he have a 35-10? Can he have a 30-15 type of game a couple more times? Because I think he'll need to for them to really pull off this upset.
I think he can. I don't know if he's going to do it game to game, but that performance will give me optimism that you can get a higher level of Harden going forward. And look, I think if they want to not even just win the series, but compete for a title, like they need Harden to be something like that, right? Mm-hmm. Like they need Harden to have this in him at times. Like there will be games where Embiid struggles a little bit, or especially if this injury with Embiid lingers. And this is we'd said like a 4 to 6 week injury maybe, and we don't really exactly know how hurt he is, even though he did play. Harden's going to have that in him. I don't think it's going to be like an every game thing. And it's similar to how I feel maybe about AD and LeBron. It's I think those guys are going to have these moments where they're the best players in their series and the best player in a game in a particular moment. But can they do it every single night and play heavy minutes? That's the question. I mean, Harden, as we said, didn't look good in game 2, 32 minutes, 2 of 14 from the field, 0 of 5 from 3. This wasn't a particularly good Harden game. He took 10 free throws, which is good, but his shot was not there. And maybe that is that lift, was that effort? What is that? I don't exactly know, but it was not. It was the complete opposite of game 1. And there may be something that's okay, I put all my energy into game 1. Yeah. What does that leave me with? Do I need to wait to get back home and feel a different way?
You know how crazy it is that the Celtics can win a game by 34 and Jason Tatum can be god-awful? That's a nice luxury.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's exactly what's special about their team, but tonight was just a reminder. It's they can blow the doors off somebody, even with the injuries, even with Harden missing like we just talked about. There's a lot of teams that their best player goes 1 of 7 with 4 fouls in 19 minutes, and they're scraping 95 points. Celtics had no issues.
So, Brendon, where are you at in the series right now? It's 1-1. Haven't looked at where the odds are, and I don't know if they necessarily would have had an odd shift on the series that quickly after game 2 to kind of see where things stand. It feels like Philly got the game when they really needed, and that would give me optimism for them pulling this off now that Boston has to go and take home court. Again, Embiid has been incredible against Boston at home this year, over 40 points a game. I think Philly has done some things well. I think they're kind of showing up. There's some matchup stuff that I like, particularly Derek White kind of having a lot of success guarding Tobias Harris. I find fascinating as if Philly needs to kind of gum up other offense and make things work. I think the series feels like it's going to be really close and have these very fine margins if everyone's healthy. I'm waiting for Tatum to kind of arrive fully because he was pretty bad, 7 shots.
He was good in game 1, but yeah,
good in game 1, but then in game 1 you had Jaylen Brown took 10 shots, and I didn't understand where he went weird. For stretches that game. That was weird.
Yeah,
there's weirdness all around. I don't have a good gauge on where this is going, other than I feel it's probably going to last a while as long as Embiid plays the rest of the way.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I think Tobias Harris has been better in these playoffs overall than I expected. I feel like Paul Reed has played pretty well, and Tyrese Maxey he's so crazy. I took this note down as I was watching. He's 6'2", but he plays like he's 6'7". I know that this isn't even a big deal, but the way that on some of these fast break dunks, he obviously had the one at the end of game 1, he dunks like it's nothing. And you would not expect that from a dude that's as small as he is. So, him stepping up and being a real part, and obviously, coming into the playoffs, we didn't even know if he would necessarily start, and he's put that to bed completely. So I think it'll be a long series. I think that honestly, looking at these two teams and this situation and their inconsistencies, both sides of this matchup, it's just even more of a bummer that the Bucks blew their chance. I mean, this is exactly why we thought Milwaukee was the best bet in the East for most of this season, because they felt like much more of a sure thing. And obviously that fell apart. So, I mean, it still feels like whichever team wins this series is going to win the East, but I don't love betting on night-to-night consistency from Boston or Philly, despite them both being awesome in the regular season.
Yeah, the sub-in for Milwaukee here is that if Denver kind of continues on their path, they might be in a really, really good spot to just like have the easiest path through all of this. Mm-hmm. Like if depending on how things go against Phoenix, we'll talk about that. But like they're maybe in the position. It's like could the team they get out of the East, like is the team who wins the East just like beat to a pulp?
Yeah, could be.
By the time they get there, it's very possible that like whoever comes out of the West could have that advantage. That like if Miami beats the Knicks, like you can't like Miami's going to be really annoying for whoever they have to play. Like we've seen them play these teams tough. Like it's just that's what's going to happen. Like I have no doubt in my mind that we'll end up there somehow. Mm-hmm. Brendon, before we wrap up the series, I'm gonna name a player. You're gonna name a player for both team X factors for Game 3. For me, for Philly, I'm gonna just be lazy and I'm gonna pick Embiid because like Embiid's got to kind of dominate. And if I'm gonna go the other way for Boston, I'm gonna look at Grant Williams. Had 4 of 8 from 3 in this game, kind of in and out of the rotation at times. So can you give them kind of consistent big wing minutes? Going forward, give me a X factor for both teams.
Philly, I'm going to keep it with Tobias Harris. I feel like he needs to continue to score. He needs to continue to attack closeouts, get to that mid-range jumper, make spot-up threes, and then at least do something against Tatum and/or Brown when he's out there defensively, which I think you could say he's been fine. He played Mikal Bridges decently well in the first round, so if he can keep that up, that'll give them a nice higher floor. And then Boston, yeah, I like the Grant Williams pick. I think that he was guarding Embiid a lot tonight. They were kind of doing the guard their big man, the opposing big man, with a big forward, and then allow their actual centers to be helpers. And it worked because Embiid wasn't really looking to score. So, yeah, I like that. I think I'm always kind of watching how good Robert Williams is, just because I think that they're going to need him. Horford has not been very great in these playoffs, frankly. So I think there's going to come a time when it needs to be Robert Williams. In this series, they want to have an answer for Embiid, but down the line, I think Time Lord's going to be important. So he'd be my other one.
Yeah, I would agree. All right, let's move on. Lakers-Warriors Game 1, Brendon. You know what was pretty good? That basketball game. That was great. Here's where I start. Anthony Davis can and was the best player on the floor in this game. Was as good as he's been. In these playoffs, Brendon, I think Anthony Davis has been one of the he just has been one of the defining players. We should have put him on our list. He has had stretches of dominance that I don't know if he's ever hit before. I don't know if he's going to keep it up as far as this whole series goes, playing 44 minutes. I'm real curious to see what he looks like in Game 2. The extra time off for them probably helps. But AD, man, to me, was the story of this game. More than the shot from Poole 8, more than anything else. I think this game was about how darn good AD was.
Happy to start with Anthony Davis. I feel like this shouldn't come as a surprise. He has been a killer every time he's ever been in the postseason.
Is he underrated at this point? Like I hate like the underrated overrated discourse, but I'm gonna go there like we're a hot.
Well, I'll take it a step further, and I'll use an even more hot takey word, which is I think he's disrespected. I don't think anyone.
Oh, love it.
I don't think, but I mean it like very literally, not like what people say when they're trying to defend their favorite player because they want to start an argument with their buddy. It's like genuinely, I think that people know he's talented, but they've gone so far out of their way to make the A Disney jokes and the he's always what do Shaq and Chuck call him about his injury? Street clothes, right? Like that. All that stuff is intentionally done to minimize him. But anytime he's ever stepped foot on a playoff basketball court, he's pretty much dominated. First season in New Orleans when they made it, 32 points per game on 54% shooting. Then a few years later, they win a series. Remember, they swept the Blazers, and then they lost in the second round to, I believe, the Warriors. They 30 points, 13 rebounds, 52% shooting. Obviously, the bubble run, he starts making all of his jumpers and goes crazy there. 2021 is his only real down year, but that's because he had some injuries and that deflated his totals. But in the first 3 games of that series, he was a monster, had back-to-back 34-point games and was about to lead them to a series victory before the injury. And then this year so far, 22 points per game, 50% shooting, 15 rebounds per game, and more than 4 blocks per game in 7 games so far. Like, I just think when he's been healthy, when he's gotten to this point, there hasn't been a question.
I agree. I cannot think of stretches for him that have been this good. Really, like there's times where he's won the title. He was great in the bubble. You mentioned the Pelican series to me where he like ruined the Blazers. That was like my real like, okay, this guy is like worth all of the hype.
Him and Drew
right?
Holiday
like
both.
To me
it was kind of like, this team with a
Yeah.
weird nickname might have something. Like, they're real.
I remember like a photo of like Drew Holiday like Dame like walking past Dame like flexing and screaming that is like seared in my brain, and if it's not real, like I hope that's a problem for me.
Yeah, that game 4 in the Blazers series, he had 47 points in the closeout game, got to the line 17 times. Like, he's just a killer. And in this series, or in this game, sorry, I feel like the cool part about what he did to me was he took advantage of the Looney basically played him the same way that he played Sabonis, right? And he took advantage of the space Looney was giving him in a way that Domantas Sabonis just absolutely couldn't. Taking the jumpers when they're there, finding cutters, keeping him honest by actually passing. Sabonis does that too, but it was putting it all together and matching Looney's intensity on the glass. Like, he had no weak point in this game.
I think he was good enough in this game to where I wonder how the Warriors adjust going forward, right? Like, I wonder how he's going to do going forward as far as they go forward is like, okay, do they have to avoid playing Looney and Draymond together, right? Like, do they have to avoid some of these issues with like playing those 2 guys together as once just because like they need to put shooting on the floor? Like, do they need to put Anthony Lamb, your guy, on the floor as a way to like really stretch things out? Like, he's that dominant, and he's like, for the Warriors, he is the reason that there is a switch in what this series looked like. This series switches because he is a different kind of center than Domantas Sabonis and has this 2-way dominance and it does all this different stuff. Again, I don't know if he's going to do it game to game. Like 44 minutes for him and trying to go for that. I wonder if the gas is dialed back a little bit for game 2, considering they can get back home.
Yeah.
And be tied and in a good spot.
I think so. A few things on that. We talked about before the series who makes the first adjustment away from big ball, right? Like my big question about the series is who can score better when their big lineup is on the court. And in this game, it was absolute. I mean, all of the tallies went in the Warriors or in the Lakers' favor in this one, but I feel like Davis did that in both ways. One, he's basically spacing proof when he plays like this. I mean, that's why that's part of why great players don't need elite spacing. Now, LeBron and Luka and some of these guys that play that way have kind of tricked us against that. But Kevin Durant, Kawhi Leonard, Anthony Davis, these guys who can just create a great shot for themselves in space in isolation, they don't need like 4 shooters dotting the court and pristine spacing because it doesn't really matter how many hands are in their face. And so that actually, to me, not only made him so special and punished Looney, but it also helped Jared Vanderbilt stay on the court, and he was such a story of the game guarding Steph Curry. Part of why he's able to do that, I mean, yes, he's still crashing the boards, he's still cutting, all these different ways that a non-shooter tries to impact the game, and he honestly makes his threes when they're wide open a lot of the time in the corner anyway, but Vanderbilt can get played off the court. I think Davis was a big reason why he wasn't able to, because you put the ball in Davis's hands, if he's making that mid-range jumper, finding cutters, all that stuff, it doesn't really matter what the rest of the guys are from a personnel standpoint because he's unstoppable no matter who he's playing with. So it's just another way that Davis's performance really helped them. But I don't know if it's Anthony Lamb on the Warriors side. I feel like they just need to stick with DiVincenzo. That's been kind of the confusing thing to me is he hit 40% of his threes in the regular season. They've been a big negative with him on the court in the playoffs, and so I get that. But like, if you're asking who do you trust, I feel like it has to be DiVincenzo over Moody, Lamb, Kuminga, any of those guys. It's like just play the vet who played well in the regular season and like don't think about it too hard.
Yeah, and look, maybe it's because he didn't hit his threes in the series against the Kings, and there's just a lack of trust there. I wonder if you're just kind of riding some of the small sample size stuff of the playoffs. Brendon, elsewhere in this game, I came away just very impressed with the two-wayness of the Warriors down the stretch. They really gummed up the Lakers' offense, where the Lakers tried to go with D'Lo to like alleviate the offensive pressure. They took out Vanderbilt, and like it just didn't really work. Like the Warriors were really in that game. That would give me some optimism for them going forward. Like I wonder if they just they get an extra day. They're out of they're not just immediately less than 48 hours turned around from a game 7. I wonder if they look a little more pep in their step for game 2. There's part of that. I wonder if that game was somewhat just a little bit of circumstances, as these things tend to be. But like I didn't come away from that game being like, okay, like the Lakers like I might favor the Lakers slightly now, just because they got game 1 and they got a road game, and like the way the AD stuff, like even if he's not at that level game to game, isn't going to go away. But I still just feel like the Warriors will have some answers for a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, I think the exhaustion or the whatever it is that affects you when you're tired, if it's mental, if it's physical, if it's shot making, if it's just conditioning, whatever. I think Curry's the number one guy I think of. Even late in the game, like you mentioned on the offensive end, he was the guy that was still getting great stuff for them. But I think they'll be ready for how much the Lakers were playing off of the Warriors shooters, which was a big storyline coming out of this game. And I think they'll have adjustments to run some more stuff to spring guys open organically rather than just, hoping for catch and shoot stuff. And then I think Curry will be better. Yeah. And I'm also just not, like I said, with the big ball versus small ball, I'm not really ready to feel like the Lakers have this whole thing figured out until we actually see a game where the Warriors lean more on small ball, which I think they will in game 2. I think that they'll sort of say, if Anthony Davis wins a game by dominating the glass, then like kudos to you, hat tip, and we'll go to LA and see what can happen here. But that feels like a lot better than Anthony Davis beating you with jumpers, which we know he can make, and getting to the line and all the other stuff. So it's like, play Draymond, play DiVincenzo, or whoever it ends up being as the 5th guy in a small ball lineup, and just roll with it. I mean, maybe it's Poole. He played pretty well. And just like try that.
Best
and
game
then
of the playoffs for Poole.
Yeah, Poole was good.
The other thing that I will wonder is I want to see how the Warriors use Curry. I think they might need to go back to that pick and roll that we saw them turn to late in that King series. I understand you're attacking AD and he's great in that, but I thought Jared Vanderbilt did a really good job of chasing around Curry and trying to lock him up. I thought Schroeder did a good job. I thought the Warriors as a team were very in tuned to what Curry was up to. Curry got 27, but it was on 24 shots. I wonder if just a more conventional attack, or maybe Clay gets hot and has a game where he gets loose or something. They need a way to loosen things up for Curry a little bit if they're not going to have these issues with spacing. Maybe the personnel changes kind of do that on themselves, but I wonder if some different ways of using Curry and attacking the Lakers defense in a different way, particularly when Vanderbilt's on the floor, I wonder if there's little ways they can kind of alter that, get Curry a little bit looser, get him into a rhythm, and get his numbers kind of to a more efficient place, which will push their offense to a better place.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I think, too, I mean, if you run that pick and roll and then you kind of immediately go into something off of that, you would imagine that the Lakers switch that, right? So then they put Anthony Davis on Curry, they put Vanderbilt on Draymond. Well, if you run that right into a dribble handoff with Curry or something, then all of a sudden Anthony Davis is the guy trying to navigate screens off the ball, right? So that some of that relocation stuff is part of why it's not just what happens in that pick and roll, but it's also then what happens off of that, especially if you do it early in the clock. So that feels like an easy adjustment. I also just I know this is not huge, but we got to move on to the other series. But I was just frustrated watching this game. Why do they not use Gary Payton as like an anything player on offense anymore? Like, I remember I have a lot of memories last year of him rolling to the basket, short roll passes, dunks. I mean, he got hurt on a dunk, right? So like, it's just bizarre that when he's out there, they're just like, all right, go stand in the dunker spot and like shut up and go guard somebody. I know they value him, but it's like, what are you guys doing? Like, this guy's the same dude you had last year. Felt like you knew how to use him. Now, maybe it's the abdominal thing. I don't know, but weird that they treat him as such a negative when they seem to have figured some cool stuff out with him last year.
Well, and it's like the beauty of him in Golden State was that he kind of figured out how to play in that system, which is hard to do.
Yeah.
And like he really he made the most of himself as a non-shooting guard in that system. And it's like that's kind of gone. And that would be a counter to some of the stuff we're talking about. I think that's a great shout. All right, let's move on, Brendon. Can't believe you want to move on to this, all things considered. Let's move on to
you could just end the
Suns
show,
Nuggets.
To be honest.
Well, sorry, buddy. I had to talk about the Cavs. You got to talk about the Suns.
At least
Chris
you
Paul's
picked the
injury.
Suns. I picked against the Cavs the whole way, and I was just being a jerk. Yeah, at least you've been supportive.
You know, we have a thing coming up later. We're going to revisit our picks to make the Final Four in the East, and you were actually. I'm going to give you some credit as I think you've just been killing it the whole time. Where I'm just like a little less sharp. You were very on the Knicks, like in that episode. Like even like you said some things about the Nets that are in retrospect like don't look great.
We'll get to
it. Yeah, we'll get to it. But okay, so the Suns are in the 2-0 hole. Chris Paul's hurt. Okay, I didn't love the campaign minutes in Game 2. Didn't love a lot of the Suns stuff in Game 2. But here, Brendon, if I'm going to be the positive one of us about this for a second. What I did like is I felt the adjustments Phoenix made for Game 2 made a lot of sense. They just maybe didn't hit enough shots.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Fair or not fair?
Absolutely fair. I mean, I think I texted you early in the game. They've made every adjustment they needed to from Game 1. And yeah, it was a weird game. I think even on the Denver side, like it wasn't like we just saw. Speaking of 87 point totals, the Sixers getting outscored by 34 in a game where they scored 87. Right, like this was still just a 10-point loss, and so both sides were missing shots. It was a weird. Jamal Murray was kept in check. The Suns bench did nothing. A lot of the secondary scoring that the Nuggets got from Bruce Brown and Aaron Gordon in Game 1 went away, and it just evolved into basically who can be better between effectively Booker and Jokic, but we'll say Booker and Durant versus Jokic. And then eventually by the end of the game, who is still has enough energy to actually keep that battle going. And I think that's a big part of what happened too is Booker and Durant, but again, especially Booker, were just getting so little help that they were Booker front rimmed like 2 or 3 shots in the fourth quarter, and it just very much became obvious that he didn't have enough juice left. So I think honestly, my takeaway from this game is you got to give the biggest possible hat tip to Nikola Jokic. That man just basically won a playoff game by himself offensively.
So where are you at with the Suns in the series? They have to win Game 3 or this is a wrap. They're already facing very long odds, I think, to kind of figure this out. I don't really know what else you can adjust going into Game 3. Like there's. There's not. I don't know. Like the Chris Paul injury also just does matter. Like I understand he wasn't perfect. I understand he's older. I would rather have Chris Paul playing minutes for me in the playoffs than campaign.
Oh, of course of course it matters. It's huge. I mean, campaign was really, really bad in Game 2. On both ends of the floor, he really made not much of a positive impact to speak of. Like he failed to get out on Caldwell Pope a few times. Caldwell Pope was 4 of 4 from deep. He turned the ball over. He was fouling like crazy. Like I think they shouldn't start him in Game 3, to be honest with you. I think that they should basically treat Devin Booker as their point guard and put another wing shooter out there, whether that's Torrey Craig, whether that's Damian Lee, whether that's Landry Shamet, I don't know, but just do it that way would be my vote. I don't know if Monty Williams will take my vote into account, but the one silver lining, or not silver lining, but sort of counterpoint to what we're talking about with the Chris Paul injury being a problem and even some of their offensive inconsistency throughout the 2 games is I think that there's a chance, because we talked a lot the last time we recorded and I went on my big rant about how they sort of have 2 offenses right now. One of them is the offense that gets the shooters going, that gets DeAndre Ayton good looks, that sort of punishes the Nuggets at all 3 levels. And then there's the Durant and Booker offense, which is a little more ISO heavy, a little bit more, a little less passing going on, a little bit less setting other guys up, but very efficient also. To me, take Chris Paul out of the equation and you take one of those sort of offensive approaches out of the equation. Now, I think Booker still has to put his Chris Paul hat on as much as he can, and you can't just not include other players on offense. Again, we talked about how tired they just got in that game too, but that might be possible here. is that it kind of simplifies things, and there's less of a question of minute to minute what their best approach is going to be. When there's only 2 creators versus 3, it makes it one step simpler for you. But no matter what, Kevin Durant needs to be better. I think that's obvious. He had 7 turnovers in game 1. He was really bad in the fourth quarter in game 2. Keeps getting his shot blocked by guards. He just has to be more dominant. Otherwise, whether Chris Paul comes back on Friday and he never misses any time, or he misses the rest of the series. If Kevin Durant's not great, then put it away. The series is over.
Yeah, 2 of 12 from 3 in game 2. I like the shots that he took. He just didn't make them. And a guy of Kevin Durant's ilk, you don't expect that to maybe happen again. But it can't happen at all if they have a chance of kind of pulling this out and coming back and like beating Denver.
We got to talk about Jokic real quick here.
Yeah. Oh, that's where I was going. That's where I was going next.
Perfect.
It's just like for the Suns. Some of this is just like I feel like if you make some shots and you get a little bit luckier, maybe things go your way.
Yeah.
But this also could just be like, hey, this is the warm up playoff run, and that's weird. Brendon, Nikola Jokic had the kind of game that for him I think is I didn't go and like check out a bunch of post game stuff from him. But the stat line for him to me is like I think really just kind of eye-popping because you hit on this. He won the game single-handedly offensively himself. Jamal Murray was 3 of 15 in this game from the field. 0 of 9 from 3, okay? KCP has 14, just made a bunch of threes, good for him. Aaron Gordon had a nice game. Michael Porter Jr. didn't give you really much of anything, 5 points, 2 of 7 shooting. Your bench gave you like very little aside from some Bruce Brown free throws. Jokic as a scorer was like assertive in the first quarter. Finishes with 39 on 30 shots. Only took 4 free throws, had a bunch of boards, only had the 5 assists. Like this wasn't like a Jokic game where he racks up a triple-double and it's the passing. It's like, okay, we kind of need to get some buckets and bruise and muck it up inside. I can do that. And was like willing to do that. And there were times in his career in the regular season where he does not always like seem to enjoy doing that. But he does it in this game. His team is up 2-0. They look incredibly great on the heels of what he's doing. He is the most consistent and intimidating and just throw anything at you presence, I think, on offense in the NBA right now. This game to me was just like his play. Like if this is the closest thing we may ever get to like a Jokic like scoring bonanza in a playoff game. That's awesome.
We talked about the Suns making all the adjustments that you would have wanted them to make. And part of that was after what Murray did in game 1, playing him more physically in game 2, taking the ball out of his hands, disrupting the pick and roll game between those two guys. And one of the things that stayed consistent from game 1 was DeAndre Ayton playing Jokic pretty well in the post and Kevin Durant being there as a rim protector when Jokic did try to score in the post. And over the course of the game, you just saw him like a boxer feeling out the opponent. And then, like you mentioned, it being a very hesitant thing with him, as always. This is not his preferred style. And as the game progressed, he's just like, all right, I'll just score 40. And he could just do it. You know, it's hook shots, it's fallaways, it's offensive rebound putbacks, it's, pass fakes into shots. It's everything. He has it all in his bag. If he's within the free throw line, if he's in the paint at all, he's going to basically make, 60% of those. And, to hesitantly and against your better judgment, just kill a team is just legendary stuff. This was the most points he's ever had in a playoff win. And this was the most field goal attempts in a non-overtime playoff win in his career. So this is genuinely one of the best performances he's ever had. And he looks on his way to finally getting back to the conference finals if the dominance continues. Like I know you have to do more than this to be considered this way, but let me just say that he is taking the steps toward the incredible superstar, finally getting over the hump legend run that we've all been waiting for.
This very much feels, Brendon, in the cards of like we can never doubt Nikola Jokic again, like kind of Giannis a couple years ago territory. And I'm sorry that is coming at the expense once again of perhaps the Phoenix Suns in some way, shape, or form.
Road team's got to win a game. Series hasn't started. We'll see.
Series hasn't started. Whereas the Nuggets have looked awesome in 2 games, and the Suns
hasn't started yet.
Are we? It like the Nuggets are the team, Brendon, where like it led by Jokic is like the engine, but the car is like fully intact and like all new pieces went through the car wash, like has a nice coat of wax on it. And the Suns are like, did we fill up the gas tank? Like
Yeah.
did we clean the seats? Like can we like vacuum and find some change under the seat to kind of get us gas at the next station? Like
It's kind of like when you're
difference.
driving and you see like the people who clearly got in an accident but just like aren't fixing the car. They're like, nah, the door's like the back passenger side, it's smashed in, but it's street legal. Cops aren't going to pull us over, and maybe money's a problem or just pride. Like I'm not fixing that. That feels like the comparison. It's like, yeah, there's something clearly squeaky going on here, and we're going up against like an F1 beautifully polished machine, and it's not really working. But no, I feel like the Suns can still, they can win Game 3, and the conversation will be very different. But the path to winning the series, even if Chris Paul never got hurt, looks a lot clearer for the Nuggets because they've already done it. Like Michael Porter Jr. hasn't even done much, like they're not even needing like all-time performances from all their guys, and they're kind of cruising.
So let me ask you this as someone who knows much more about this team than I do, who understands it in a deep way. What kind of Game 3 win would give you the most confidence looking ahead to them getting back in the rest of the series? Like what kind of performance would give you belief that they could pull this off and still win the series?
Kevin Durant scoring 40-plus points on 55+% shooting with very few turnovers. Like just supernova Kevin Durant. That's what we've been waiting for 7 playoff games from the Suns now, and it hasn't happened. So it has to, again, for them to win, especially now that Paul's out. But even before that, he's their best creator of a shot in tight moments. He is the best player overall on this team. He is having to do a lot on defense, which I think matters, but we've seen him be a two-way beast in the playoffs before. He's just got to pull that out again.
Yeah, I think him and Booker. Booker was the best player in the playoffs in round 1, and that has him in the case here. And if he kind of has a game where he looks like that guy again, and I don't think Denver's like doing anything with him that should be really flustering him, if I'm being entirely honest. I just think he hasn't been quite as sharp. But if he can kind of be that guy, maybe this kind of gets to a place where things get better. That's the game, Brendon. For a lot of reasons, that's the game I'm second most looking forward to. Lakers Warriors Game 3 or Game 2 is the one I'm most looking forward to. But Game 3 of that series is right up there.
It's okay.
That's true. That's extremely true. I'm
interested to see the. Yeah, tell people about that.
Okay, well, so my Instagram algo, I'm saying algo like it's a hip thing. It's like algorithm. There's a lot of like just LeBron stuff in there. Like I get like I've gotten a lot of like him talking crap to Dillon Brooks edits in the last week, and like a lot of old highlight, and I'm like, this is good for me. So I'm just like scrolling through during tonight, and I text this to you, and I don't know if this person made this or like what the deal is, but this person, there's like a GIF where it's Ja Morant saying we're good in the West, and then there's a clip that someone modded LeBron and Ja into WWE 2K23, and he chucks Ja Morant out of the ring, and then there's another one where Dillon Brooks says I poke bears. That clip.
Yep.
And then LeBron is throwing Dillon Brooks off the top of like the steel cage for like a cage match, and then Michael Cole is like celebrating at the end of the clip. It is like someone put so much time into this, and I think this person did make it, but like this just came in my feed, and I'm like, wow, this is concerning how specific this is. To
you've programmed your LeBron standum into your Instagram feed. Mark Zuckerberg knows you better than you know yourself, and you're getting what you asked for subconsciously. I think that's a great way to put a bow on our Suns Nuggets conversation. Was wrestling mods, and we can be done talking about my sadness. I have 2 days still before this fucking Game 3. It's also the longest break of any series the Suns have had, and of course it's after they lose 2 games.
Yeah.
Sadness.
That's tough. That's tough. Okay, let's I don't have a lot of Heat Knicks thoughts. That series is just probably gonna go 7. All right.
Yeah,
just
and with
moving
Jimmy
on.
Hurt, it's like, what are you really gonna analyze? It's like, Caleb Martin going off. Like, I don't know.
I like 10 minutes to talk about Kevin Love. We can do it. Brendon, let's move on to the final fours we picked. So let's start in the West. Here's how I picked and I wrote in our notes as I found it in our long running outline. I said with absolutely no confidence: Warriors, Nuggets, Clippers, Grizzlies. 2 out of 4, 50%.
Mm-hmm.
A real big L on the Grizzlies, real big L on the Clippers. Okay, then you went Nuggets, Warriors, Suns, Grizzlies. You're 3 out of 4.
And I even had it where like the other team in the Lakers series is my pick. So like I was very ahead of the curve. I knew everyone matchups. I knew exactly what was going to happen. I just picked that series wrong. That's exactly. I'll roll with that.
So what I feel like we take away from this is we both had faith in Memphis, and clearly there's something wrong with what they were doing there. The half-court offense stalled out again. Maybe all the distractions added up. I think there's probably that boatload of things beyond like Dillon Brooks being a heel or whatever, right? So I think like that's all part of it. I think that's pretty obvious. The Clippers, it's like, okay, they played the Suns and like Kawhi Leonard like tore his meniscus. So like I maybe I just shouldn't ever bank on the Clippers being healthy again. I didn't go as far as to put them in the finals, as some very smart people did. But I don't think I'm ever gonna pick them to make like anything again until like I just see them there. Like
I'll
I'm
pick
just
them
not
to
gonna believe
make
it's true until
a
they're there.
trade.
Yeah, spend some money. Yeah. Nuggets, obvious, best team in the league for most of the year, or a lot of the year. Very good team at the very least. Jokic, incredible. I feel like the Warriors one like really worked out for us just because they were not necessarily like this wasn't like the easiest title defense season for them. They were in the play-in for a little bit at a certain point, and like they were the 6th seed and like had to win Game 7 on the road to get to this. But like, turns out the Warriors are really good. Turns out like you just like have Steph Curry and he can do that stuff, and that team knows how to play and win big games, and that kind of matters.
Yeah, what's funny about this is I picked the Suns, obviously, as you just said, and this was before the Durant trade. So I just got very lucky there.
Yeah,
I was completely being a homer, and it just worked out.
So that is good context because when we talk about the East, that'll kind of factor into one of your picks, which I wrote down in the exact quote you had. But is there any overarching lessons that we can take from these West advances, Brendon? Is there anything that we feel like maybe we should reevaluate going forward after thinking about this? I also just like probably should just pick LeBron to make these things and just assume they're going to.
He hasn't done it in
probably
3 years.
Should have just been a homer, to be honest.
So I have a big picture take from the whole 8 once we get there after the East. I would say from the West, what I was thinking about a lot was these are 4 teams who did make it, now that we know, with obviously the Lakers, Suns, Warriors, and Nuggets, who have just continued to try to improve their teams. Like obviously the Lakers and Suns very much tried to really go big. We thought the Lakers might get Kyrie. They end up getting like 4 good role players. And then, the Nuggets have to tinker because they will never pay the tax multiple years in a row and accrue a big bill. And then the Warriors are just going to spend whatever it takes, and they've continued to make trades. They didn't really do a lot, I guess, in season. They don't typically do that, and they were coming off a title defense. So maybe they're a little bit of an exception for this particular year. But I guess just compared to the Clippers, who are basically beholden to their star players' health, and then the Grizzlies, who I think it was a big story that they did not do anything. That was kind of the contrast that I thought of as we were looking around, is like, especially the Suns and Lakers making it. Like they knew they needed to really swing for the fences, and they did, and it worked.
Maybe just also helps to get Anthony Davis healthy.
Yeah, of course. And, Chris Paul, Kevin Durant, the Suns were healthy heading into the playoffs, so it always helps. Yeah.
All right, let's go to the East, where there's a little more, I think, spice and sizzle to this. So we both had the Bucks. We both had the Celtics and the 76ers. I had the Cavs, which LOL. You had the Nets, which also LOL.
Mm-hmm.
Brendon, I'm going to say 2 things. On my end, Jake, you can hit me with the bell for this, producer Jake. I am not going to be like overly optimistic about the Cavs until they like show me something next year. This playoffs thing like means it's time to put up or shut up when it matters. Like I'm just there with them now. Like that is what has happened. Donovan Mitchell needs you to play well in the playoffs again.
We'll have a Donovan Mitchell conversation, a version of what we already had via text the other day at some point during the offseason once we know what Cleveland tries to do here. But I think you're right. I think that player and that team, it's a prove it situation. I think that the young players, there's no reason to think they can't prove it, but they got kind of punched in the face in their first go round. So TBD how that kind of treats them in the future. I have a question. So obviously, yes, I picked the Brooklyn Nets.
Well, can I read your quote?
Yes.
Your exact quote. I went and I couldn't find like year 4 in like the document, so I went and found him in the episode, and it said your exact quote is, "I buy that team completely." Now, this is the team that had Kyrie Irving, who was like a bajillion things that Kyrie has done that would give you some ideas that maybe he's not, worth buying completely. The Durant asked for a trade in the summer. The track record of the recent Brooklyn Nets.
They fired their coach in season this year. That happened as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Ben Simmons was on that team, Brendon.
Still is. Yeah.
Still, look, Ben Simmons, I hope you live allegedly. For all we know, he's like, I don't know what he's doing. Just you buy that team completely in retrospect you've gotten more right than I think I have during the course of this, but I give myself like plus 100 because like I didn't say I buy the Brooklyn Nets completely.
That's fair.
Is that fair?
It's fair.
Okay.
I mean, maybe I was just doing some like reverse voodoo jinxing to try to get Kevin Durant onto my team. I'm not.
Yeah, but it cost you your number 1 son. So.
Yeah, but now I get to be a complete
Bridges.
Fanboy of Mikal Bridges. So really win-win-win. I was an emotional wreck for like a week after that, but I recovered. Let's see. So what I was going to ask you about the Nets is, now that we've seen how the East playoffs have played out through 1.5 rounds, that team, the way that they were playing, we know Ben Simmons was a negative, a 0, whatever. But that aside, because he wasn't really impacting the team even when I said that, still sort of feel like they would be my pick in the East, or at least up there, if they had kept that group together and, been healthy and all that stuff. Like, obviously that's a lot of ifs, but everyone else is sort of dealing with all that same stuff. Like, I think I would still have them. I mean, they were just capable of so much offensive firepower, and as much as Sean Marks has, shit on his face from how everything went there, I don't know how much blame he really deserves. Whatever, conversation for a different day. He really knew how to build a Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving roster pretty well, even after the James Harden trade, and he had to kind of reset things. So that group just made sense to me, and I thought Durant and Kyrie were on a really high level. I think they still would be. They would be in this round if those guys had been healthy, and if they were playing, let's say they were the 4 seed, if they were playing, I guess what it would be the Heat. I mean, I don't know, but I think that they would be a conference finals team.
Yeah, assuming Kyrie could be normal, or didn't get hurt, or Durant doesn't get hurt again or something.
I deserve to be mocked for assuming all those things were going to happen, but that team, you can't argue. They were 26-2 at one point in a stretch. They were an obscene team.
Yeah, but it's like the car that had a nice paint job, and then it's you look under the hood and it's so
steam.
I can't drive this.
Yeah. Smoke. I mean, why did I say steam? Smoke. There's not water boiling under there. It's smoke.
We're just really big car guys over here at the Just Basketball Show. That team. The thing about these teams in the East, even teams like Milwaukee, that obviously I thought was going to win a title, and a lot of people did, and the Celtics are good, and the 76ers are good, and none of them we're in this point where none of these teams feel overwhelmingly dominant.
Yeah.
All of these teams have these weird flaws, have weird kinks, have stretches where none of them look particularly good. Brooklyn was the biggest example of that at their peak. But Philly, we've seen that with Philly. We've seen that with Boston. We've obviously just saw that with the Bucks, with or without Giannis. All of these teams have vulnerabilities, and that could have made for some really chaotic stuff if we would have gotten those 4 teams in some jumble of a top 4 in the East, and they all ended up there. That would have been honestly, as a basketball fan, we got a little cheated. I think by not getting that like 4-man like tournament at some point. Like that it feels like a missed opportunity.
Yeah, but then on the West side, which I think is pretty exciting right now, you would have had a way weakened Suns team, and I think whatever the fourth would have been in the West would have been like a very clear outlier, you know. So Durant moving changed both conferences obviously pretty dramatically. But my big picture takeaway on this, and we got to get to AC here in a second, but I tried to come up with what every team has in common of these 8 big picture. I came up with ball movement and physicality because I feel like the threes are baked in these days, and like the whole NBA.
Unless you're like the Suns, who just like don't take like their threes or like come from a different way. Like the Suns are kind of the anomaly to that, I would say.
That's fair, but even outside of game 1, which was very weird, even like getting up 23s is more than we would have said a long time ago, right? So like that offensive philosophy tends to extend across everybody, but you're right. It's not, I guess Phoenix is an outlier there. Wings, like the whole league kind of knows like you got to have wing depth and versatility there, or try to. If you don't, you're going to be screwed. Hello, Cleveland. So it's like, well, now that we're kind of all on that even playing field, like I feel like ball movement and physicality to me are kind of what come to mind. And I feel like you could make the case the Cavs lacked both. You could make the case the Bucks lacked both. By the time all their players were hurt and the way that their kind of end of the bench rounded out, I felt like Milwaukee was one of the most physical teams. And then it felt like they were getting roughed around by Miami. Maybe that's just a bad matchup, but you could say that about both of those teams. I feel like the Grizzlies, they didn't really have the sharing of the offense and enough offensive kind of dynamic stuff to get the job done. I would say the Kings, who also lost here, are the Kings the best non-Final Four team outside of Milwaukee?
I mean, I think based on the fact that they like took the Warriors to 7 and that series was unbelievably close, I would say yes. Like none of these other teams deserve like that kind of respect.
So like they obviously had the ball movement, so they don't really fit here in terms of the teams that why they lost type of way to explain it. The inverse of why the teams that didn't get in, but they definitely kind of got out physical by the Warriors by the end. They just didn't have the defensive intensity to kind of match what Golden State was doing. So I don't know. Does that sound reasonable? It's kind of a very basic description, but ball movement and physicality, it feels like you have to have an offense with a lot of threats, and you have to have a defense that makes the opponent feel you.
Yeah, I am very curious to see like if any of these, if there are things. I think one of the easiest theoretical things, Brendon, is like I think if you look at what some of these teams did, it's like they went out and got guys that can shoot, and they went out and got guys that like know kind of how to play. Like the Nuggets getting KCP was just like a no-brainer kind of thing. The Grizzlies are probably going to go look to get that kind of piece, maybe at a higher level, I think, but go get that kind of player in that regard. The Warriors like have kind of found a lot of those kind of guys. Like even in their own way, like Philly has found weird fitting versions of that. They're kind of fitting like ovals into circular holes, but like with Tobias Harris and like PJ Tucker, but they found their version of that, and every other team that like doesn't have them is kind of got screwed here. Like New York doesn't quite have that, and like Miami like has like a bunch of like very flawed ones, but like they have ways to figure some of that stuff out.
I think New York does. I just think all of the guys who are like that are just young role players, but
and I think of them as like guards. Like I think there's like a kind of guard. This is like an episode I want to have in the summer. Yeah, but like I thought they really benefited from Randall being back in game 2.
They did, but I just think like Toppin kind of knows what he's doing, and he can shoot open corner threes. Like I think he fits what you're talking about, at least a little.
For sure. Do you think the Cavs should have taken Toppin instead of Okoro?
I don't think it would have mattered, especially once you got Evan Mobley. You're not going to play Toppin at the 3, so.
No. Okay. Well, on that note,
another ding for you. Another
next
buzzer there from Jake.
Hit me over the head with it, Jake. All right, coming up next, Alex Caruso, Chicago Bulls guard, talks to our Brendon Kleen. You guys are going to love it. Enjoy.
All right, here on the Just Basketball Show with Alex Caruso. He is here for Travis Matthew, a new partner of the brand. We'll talk about that in 1 second. Alex, I hate to bring up something negative off the top. I hope it's not negative, but the NBA world, I see you tweeting. I know you're watching. The NBA world can't get enough of Jimmy Butler. You kind of got the beginning of the inferno that he's been, just like on fire. And you obviously saw him in the 2020 finals. My question for you, you guys actually, it seemed like kind of held him in relative check. He didn't even shoot 50% in that play-in game. Obviously the loss, I'm sure, doesn't make that any better, but what do most of us watching him at home not notice about maybe just what makes him so honestly looks impossible to guard?
Yeah, I mean, for starters, he's got that, that competitive drive, that competitive instinct to just do whatever it takes to win. So that kind of drives everything and motivates everything. And then once he gets to the playoffs, I've talked about this before with people, like he becomes an elite shot maker in the postseason. You can't really look at his numbers coming into a series or into a game like us, the playing game. You kind of have to just expect him to shoot well because, as you see, he's making threes. He's hitting fadeaway mid-range. He's getting to his spots and getting to the rim. Like he really can do just about everything on the basketball court. And then, he's a freak athlete and he's really smart.
So kind of staying on the defensive end, I don't know if the average NBA fan realizes that you guys in Chicago finished as a top 10 defense this season. Mm-hmm. Just, young role players, some guys that maybe aren't always known for defense. That's a huge accomplishment. What do you think made things click on that end for you guys this year?
Yeah, I think we really just bought in to kind of helping each other. We obviously had great individual defenders in certain points. Me, obviously Pat Bev joined us halfway through the year. Drum was pretty big for us in the paint this year. And then, like you said, some young players, and Ayo DeSumo. I thought Pat Williams and Kobe White really took a step defensively, just understanding how to play and how to use their bodies. And we all just kind of bought in and kind of played for each other in that end. And that's not to say we didn't, have nights where we didn't do our jobs or guys didn't get, 30, 40, 50, but that's the NBA and guys are going to do that regardless if you're top defense or not. But yeah, I think it was a really good job of us just, maintaining the focus for it all year. And, that's something that can be constant every night, whether shots go in or not.
All right. I have a couple follow-ups on that, but tell me about what you have going on with Travis Matthew. And honestly, give our audience like one item in the catalog that gets your kind of highest recommendation. What's the thing people should be clicking on immediately and trying out if they haven't?
Got you. Well, yeah. So Travis Matthew, I think I've been with him since 2021, just a little over 2 years, and they've been great partners to work with. The people are great. Anytime I have to do a social content post or a content capture, it's usually the same group of people, and they're just regular people, just like me, just really, really easy going. And the products, they kind of speak for themselves. Like it was involuntary. I was thinking about walking up to my iPad to get this, and I got Travis Matthew hat and shirt on, and it's just become part of my closet and part of my wardrobe on a daily basis. One piece is tough. I think the newest thing for me, they have this series called the Cloud series that they came out with, I think, in the last year. And it's just super soft. They have sweats, they got sweatshirts, and then my favorite are the shorts. So they're just super, super, super soft cotton shorts that I can wear, to bed, to the store, hanging out at home. Like the Cloud series has really done it for me, but then the shorts is something I've recently come across.
All right, love it. I'm in Arizona, so shorts is a year-long thing. There's not really a non-shorts
here,
time.
so it's needed.
You got it. All right, so I want to talk about Pat Bev. I'm sure it's one thing to play against him, one thing to see him in games. We had a big laugh on the show this year just with the camera, with the LeBron foul in that one game, and showing the ref evidence, I guess you could say. But what's it like being that dude's teammate, getting to team up to try to take down a backcourt with that guy kind of in your corner and just in your locker room day to day?
Yeah, I was anxious at first when I said we got him, just because, I only, had everybody else's point of view from outside looking in. Obviously you see there's a little bit of antics, and he's an emotional player at times, but I have some of that emotion that runs through me too. And I quickly found out, he's consummate professional, does anything to win. He's a really, really good teammate, takes care of his teammates, makes sure that he's looking out for the other guys. It was a pleasant surprise just to have him around. And then obviously the basketball part of it. Me and him, saw the game defensively and even offensively, just being able to take advantage of certain stuff and make the game easier for DeMar, Zach, Vooch, and then just be pests on defense and kind of cover for each other when we go rogue and, try to get some steals or some deflections.
Did he have any good Chicago spots? I mean, that's the other part of it, right? I'm sure he had some things to tell you guys about or show you around. Hey, try this, try that. He's a local.
Yeah, well, you'd be surprised. Vooch is actually the foodie on the team, so he probably had more food recommendations than Pat. But I know Pat just loved being at home, and that's kind of what, doubled down. He's already a high energy, very active guy, and then getting to play in front of home crowd, I'm sure in front of friends and family just about every night. It was a really big boost for him.
All right. The other thing I wanted to pick up on from what you said about the team and the defense this year was, it's almost like I feel like watching the league this year. I don't want to say it's not a negative or like a frustration to let somebody go off for 30, 40 points, but it felt like it happened every day.
Mm-hmm.
And, I was looking through the DPOY votes and you got a few. I feel like this was a really strong season from you there. But at the same time, like you said, there's still nights where you went home and you're like, how did that guy shoot 60% and score 45
kept
points?
Me up till 2 a.m. thinking about it.
What's that like? I mean, what do you feel like? What does that feel like to watch and be part of the league with such a big offensive explosion? And what do you think explains it? Have you thought about that at all, of why this is happening? Because it feels insane to just turn on League Pass every night and watch what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, the league is it's more skilled than it's ever been. I don't know the number, but I know there's a record number of players that average 30 plus points per game this year. I saw something on JJ Redick's podcast, Old Man of Three, about like comparing. I can't remember what era it was. I think it was the Suns back when they had Steve Nash, and they were like viewed as like, pick and roll, spread it out, running gun, and like they would have been like the 28th best offense or offensive rating this year. And it's just the evolution of the game, man. Everyone's skilled, everyone's trying to play more space, shoot more threes. A little bit of analytics come in. People are trying to do the whole free throw, layups, threes. And I mean, the league is not dumb. They're smart. They know that offense sells, and they know that that's something that people want to show up and watch. They want to see 120 to 125. They don't want to see 90 to 95, just for consumer basis. But yeah, for me, man, it's just like I got to go out there and try and do my job every night at a high level. And if I do it, then I'll probably have the best player on the other team. So it's usually home guard, and they'll probably go there like for their average, maybe a point or two below their average. And if you don't do your job, then that's when you get the outliers. That's when you get like the 40s and the 50s. But yeah, it's not a one-man job anymore in the league. Usually, looking back, I remember just watching old players, like Tony Allen, Ron Artest, like guys, you could just be super physical and just kind of almost just hand check and then use length and activity. And the way the game's called now, like those guys would have to change their game just because, being able to use your hands or like an arm bar is kind of outlawed.
So without asking about the officiating or how things have changed with the entertainment product, because I don't want to go down that rabbit hole.
That was
I appreciated the podcast plug there too. It's a great company man a little bit there. But Mikal Bridges, I have his jersey behind me. I'm finally able to be a complete fanboy because he's not in Phoenix, and I don't have to pretend like I didn't love covering that dude anymore. So he told me, because I've covered him for most of his career before the trade, that the big thing he learned coming up through the league, and you've been in the league a while now too, is like, it's one thing to have the talent, to be naturally gifted on defense, to commit to that end, but it's another thing to guard over seasons and seasons the same couple dudes over and over. You know their tendencies, you know what the game plan is, you know what your coaching staff wants you to do against them, on and on. But if it's that, then speak on that. But what do you feel like has been where you've grown the most on defense? Because it's not just static, right? Like you're great at defense. You want to keep getting better at it. What's been the biggest thing for you on that end of the floor?
Yeah, you have to keep getting better. You know, you think about guys go home for the summer and they always talk about adding stuff to their game. It's like if you don't go home and, you know, kind of advance, I mean, there's not much you can do defensively at that, you know, at a certain point, maybe you can work on strength or quickness. But, you know, at the end of the day, it's about the knowledge of the game, you know, understanding, like you said, player tendencies, sets teams run, just being able to compete at a high level and not have, you know, I guess what's that Ted Lasso is like, be like a goldfish. So you got to be able to forget and just go again and go again and go again, because these guys, like I said, you play the best defense of your life and they're going to get their average and make some tough shots, and you got to be okay with it. And some of that, you know, if you let them making a couple tough shots or a couple bad calls go their way, if you let that affect you, now all of a sudden, you know, you're opening up that threshold for them to go and get those big numbers. But yeah, I think for me, it's about being smart. You know, you got to understand what guys like to do, the little tricks and stuff like that. Like you got to know Trae Young, Dame, they like the little stop and shot coming off the three. You know, Chris Paul, when he's in the bonus, is going to do the rip through. Luka's a big pump fake guy. Just knowing guys' tendencies to be able to try and, you know, be as disciplined and make it as tough for them as possible. Because we've said multiple times already, like they're going to get theirs eventually.
All right, last question for you. What's an ideal off-season day look like for you? How are you going to be spending the summer, getting away from things or in the gym? What's your summer like?
Ideal off-season day, let's say it's like middle of the off-season. I'll wake up. I got a weight room at the house, so I'll probably lift here sometime early morning, get to a gym, work out for, you know, an hour and a half, and then come back around noon, have some lunch, and go play golf.
And some Travis Matthews stuff, right?
Yeah, Travis Matthew hat, polo, shorts, hitting them straight.
All right, I love it. Thank you, Alex.
Yeah, of course, man. Thanks for having me on.